So there's Nebraska, that to me was always a record that mattered by an artist that mattered to me. And then he wrote his memoir, Born to Run, and Nebraska passed so fast in it.
Yeah, that's true.
And yet he told a story around that time about, struggles with mental illness that I felt like, I think there's a connection between that story and Nebraska. Like, I think that actually is the Nebraska story. And that was the impetus, was to start writing around that. And it's still a situation where you're nothing. If you're writing about Bruce Springsteen's Nebraska, you're nothing without his participation. You need him, because it's like there's Warren's opinions, and they don't sell books, and they don't get you an audience. But Warren's opinions reflected through Bruce's recollections and ideas and insights, then I've got, that's what gives it potency. So, it goes from a proposal that goes to an editor who says, "Ooh, this is interesting. Do you think you can get an interview?" And then you do a little exploration, and ultimately that contract was signed without a confirmed interview. But I felt close, so the contract got signed, and then he did sit for an interview, and then he was enormously helpful. And, you're off and running, and then at a certain point, you're writing for your kids. And that's like, that's the beautiful place to be, that, you try to get to every time.
Yeah. Was it one meeting with Bruce? Did you get one shot, or is it a couple interviews over time?
Well, there was one day where I got what I needed, but I was at the end of it, and I sent the manuscript to his manager, John Landau, and then John said, "Send it to Bruce," and I sent it to Bruce, and then I got a call. And I always like to point out, these guys, they each took about a day to read. I mean, they sat down and read. You never get readers like that. Like, don't even dream of having some. It's like, "Oh, sorry, yeah, you sent it 6 months ago." These guys, like, they sat down, they did it, they took notes. Okay, so after, John Landau said, "Send this to Bruce," he read it really quickly, and then I got a call from an undisclosed number, and it was Bruce, because here's the order of events. Bruce sent an email first and said, he said some kind things about the book, and then said, "How can I help you?" And I said, I can't find the house. Like, I'd love to find the house. And then I got the call from the undisclosed number, and Bruce was calling from the room where he recorded Nebraska in this rental house, and said, "I haven't been in here in 40 years. And the owner, who's the same guy who rented to me, said I can bring you out." And we made a time. I went to Bruce's house, and then we drove to the Nebraska house together. So he gave me that first major interview, and then he gave me this culminating experience that was really, really meaningful to me. And then I wrote it into the book. So I got to go out with that moment. And, it was, I describe it because we walk into this room and it has these orange shag carpets that he was, on the phone, he said, they're still there. And, we walk into the room and the rest of the house, it was quite different. They did, they built a second story. They built it out. So you wouldn't recognize it. But this one room was like a time capsule. And when we walked into it, we both just, felt the weight of the history and, kind of took that breath to absorb it. And then he handed me his iPhone. He said, take my picture. And I took his picture in the room where he recorded Nebraska. And then I sent him a message later saying, can you send me that picture?
Right, of
And
course.
then later I asked permission to put it in the book. So it's in there.
Yeah.
But he's very very intuitive about the creative process. And he gave me what I needed to finish this and gave me this fuel to then go into the next stage of a book, which is like, wrapping up the artwork, starting to prepare it for the marketplace and getting ready to tell the story, which is it's what we're doing right here now. Like it's a really fun part of the process for me.
Yeah.
That's crazy. So, I mean, that house could be like Big Pink, except no one knows where it was. It's kind of crazy. Like,
Well,
like this should be like a famous house that people drive by, but it's just kind of
it's
nondescript.
part of it is that it's a cul-de-sac, so it's a little bit hidden away. But part of it is Nebraska. More people know where the Born to Run house is because of Born to Run. But Nebraska always had this quieter life. That if there are a couple measures. One of them is volume. Well, Born to Run had all the hype. Nebraska was quieter.
Yeah.
Born in the USA, really loud. But how much they matter over time, that's a different measure. So when Bruce says Nebraska still may be my best album, that's a huge statement about that long-term mattering. And there, Nebraska is up with the biggest of them.